As we look at the traditional models of philanthropy and community investment, maybe the word is even impact investing, we find some things are really changing. We're coming to part 2 of the interview with John Belluomini of the Center for the Greater Good right here on Rainmakers TV. John, welcome back.
Thank you.
And actually, just for so that everybody knows, we just stopped, took a little break after part 1, and we're going right into part 2. But I do want to kind of recap for people who it's been a while since they've seen part 1. The Center for the Greater Good, what is it?
We are a for-profit, civic-minded organization that focuses on funding low-income communities, the infrastructure that you need, housing, charter schools, student housing, and then we take the profits that we make from that and we reinvest it into the community to hire community coordinators and help people overcome poverty, and that's our #1 goal, is to overcome poverty.
But you're not doing this by yourself, are you?
Absolutely not. We've actually talked to over 3,000 people in the community development space. We've organized several partners, the #1 owners of housing in the U.S. that are behind us, and our goal is to create asymmetric change in the community development space.
The difference in the approach to impact investing of the Center for the Greater Good is?
The difference, there's two differences. One is, instead of just lending money and then paying back the investor, we lend the money and then we take 35% of the profits and we put it back into the community to fund the necessary services. And then 2, before we lend any money into the community, we actually go in and assess with the community, with the nonprofits, and say, what do you actually need versus coming in with, this is what we have. And that's a big difference. And then we measure the outcomes and we provide a framework for people to work with.
Mm-hmm. And is that measurement of outcomes that we're discussing, and in fact, right now we're getting started with brand new material, part 2 of this interview with John Belluomini. So, John, we were talking before about your community's economic stability and outcomes, and the primary concern being economic stability, with the sub-concern alleviating poverty. But you also talk about a sub-concern of barriers to home ownership. In light of all that's happened, you know, with our mortgage foreclosure crisis, for example, does that even matter here anymore?
You know, I'm kind of torn on that one, because I'm not sure if people just coming out of poverty, if the best tool for them is to own a home. I think barriers to rental, barriers to being in a home is really the right way to say that one, and for me. And it's, you know, in our cities, it's so expensive. Over 50% of people's income goes to a home, whether it's rent or mortgage. And that takes away money for food, clothing, education, and it causes people to work 2 jobs and 3 jobs and be away from their family, and the problem just expands from there.
What does the Center for the Greater Good do to help with the barriers to being in a home?
So we provide low-cost financing that enables our partners to offer rental units at 60% to 70% below the market rate for rentals in that area.
Well, now, wouldn't that make everybody else in the community angry, because you'd be driving down the price of rents?
We'd be driving down the price of rents, and if they're angry about that, I can't help them. These are the people that show up, that serve the food, that take care of their children, and they should not be driving 2 hours down the road, so they're not with their families. So if they're angry, I can't help them. Okay.
So one of the other things that you talk about is limited mobility options. That's transportation. In the United States, certainly there are huge transportation investments, but not all of them work. What do you do in terms of, I mean, transportation is hugely expensive.
It absolutely is. And again, our approach is not coming in with a specific thing. It's going with the community and saying, what do you need? And this is how much capital we can put towards that on a sustainable basis. So if they say, hey, it's limited mobility, it's a senior center, or it's single mothers who don't have a car, then we would look at how do we work with the resources in the community and organize them in the best way to provide that resource to the community.
Now, you sound like you're coming at this from an American point of view. At the same point in time, as we talked about in the last show, you were recently at the U.S. Secretary of State's Global Impact Economy Forum.
Correct.
Or Global Economy Impact Forum. And you weren't talking about just the United States there, were you?
No, and we're not just talking about the United States here. We're starting here, but this model works worldwide, and our goal is to share it worldwide, because we're all one. It's all one planet, we're all one energy. I could say that I'm from California. And you know, this is a worldwide problem, and everybody in the U.S. uses financing to do community development. And so this is a model that will work worldwide.
Continuing on with the outcomes evaluations criteria, you also talk about poor socioeconomic success as a sub-concern of economic stability. What does that mean?
That is people that are trapped in the working poor. They work 2 jobs, they work 3 jobs, they make enough money to pay their rent, and that's about it. And then they have to make choices on food, clothing, shelter, education, if their children get the right shoes, if their children can wear more than the same outfit, more than one outfit to school. These are the things that happen. So they start making choices that affect their children, and then their children grow up in a different way, and their children are marginalized, and it compounds throughout throughout the world.
You don't sound like a home lender.
We're not a home lender. We focus on revitalizing communities.
But you are loaning money for homes.
It's yes, and if you think of housing, it's a platform. Without that basic shelter, it's hard to do anything. If you don't have a home, how do you make a phone call to get a job? How do you clean up to go to work? How do you have a place to relax and feel safe? How do you have a place to learn? How do you have a place for you to nurture your children?
Do you consider yourself a social worker?
No, I think there are really great people that do that. My goal is to create asymmetric change in how we finance our communities and how we overcome poverty worldwide.
You know, you realize that what I've been asking is all of these different things is to try to put you in a box.
No, I don't see the box. I had this discussion with somebody yesterday. They said I scare some people because I'm outside of the box. I actually don't see the box.
Excellent. Let's talk about another sub-concern, which is the risk of homelessness. And that is a big one, and you've kind of been there, haven't you?
The risk of homelessness?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've been down to $30 for a month, and telling the stories to the landlords and, why the check's not there.
So what are your options when you've got that?
Sleep in your car. If you haven't gotten rid of your car, which my car was taken. So there are, I'd say, 45 million people that are a paycheck away from being homeless. There are 2 million children in our country today that are homeless.
And there are millions of children all around the world who are homeless as well.
Yes.
And you say that this model, again, will work again in Kenya as well as Kentucky.
Absolutely.
This is the U.S. national poverty rate is the highest it's been in the last 11 years, and that's from the 2010 U.S. Census. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think the poverty rate hasn't changed? Because I believe there's a couple of reasons. I think that we've created a top-down system to save people, and that's broken. I believe that the model of just giving money away doesn't work anymore. We've given away $4.5 trillion worldwide to end poverty and cure things, and nothing's changed. It's gotten worse.
As we talk about all of these different outcomes measurements that you're talking about as part of your definition of success, what if a particular area is not successful?
That's the great thing about our model. We're hiring people to do work. And if it's not working, we're going to change it. I don't know how else to say it.
Don't know how else to say it. Okay, well, let's talk about another part of your measurement. You're actually something that you talk about a lot, which is life skills and entrepreneurship. Is that something that's part of the Center for the Greater Good, or something that's part of your home loan?
Well, again, it's not a home loan. We put debt into communities that's low cost that they can actually pay back. And a big thing that we see missing is the fundamental life skills. And this is not what you see, it's what the community reports back to us. And then we say, okay, how do we fund community organizers? It's a model that's been proven to work. How do we fund community organizers that can help people with fundamental life skills? And then how do we have those community organizers work with the citizens to bring in entrepreneurs that can help transfer entrepreneur skills? And then with the communities we build in open space for nonprofits to go in and for small business owners to go in, to where they can actually have a space where they can work with the residents.
There's a lot of nonprofits out there. Do you let them all in?
No.
You're going to say to a nonprofit that you can't come in and help the people in this community?
Absolutely.
How come?
You know, there are, I just keep going back to the Tenderloin because that's where I started my life. You know, there's 280 service providers there. I am not convinced that all of them are doing the best work. I'm convinced the majority of them are, but then how are they organized? How are they interacting with the resident? Who's there saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't need 14 drug and alcohol centers talking to the same person at the same time about the same thing. A lot of nonprofits are looking for capital to keep their doors open, and so they want to get that resident on their books and say to the foundation, hey, look, I have this person. And the residents, what happens to them is they start shutting down. There's a wall that goes up because they start feeling like, what's wrong with me? I've got all these nonprofits trying to save me. The bottle's broken.
Are you a threat to nonprofits?
No, I think the nonprofits are a valuable resource in our country, and this is from listening to them. Again, we've spoken to 3,000 people in the community development space, including a lot of nonprofits, and they're looking for a way to become sustainable, and they want to be measured. It's just, where's the funding to provide the measurements? So all these tools exist. Everything I'm talking about exists. It's just not organized and financed in the right way to create sustainability.
You say this model's proven where?
All the interventions and outcomes that we've listed have been proven around the world. And so all of our sources are cited in the back of the Good Life Guidebook.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, I can attest to that because I started
Yeah.
looking some of them up and there were just too many for me to do. So.
Yeah, so everything that we've recommended has been proven. And again, it's open source, and we're happy to share that with anybody.
In life skills and entrepreneurship, when I hear entrepreneurship, you know, I think of the microfinance model that Muhammad Yunus started, and then so many others have come after that. But in the United States, that model is more difficult because of the expense and other things. When you talk about entrepreneurship, how can you help entrepreneurship, or is that something that you do?
How we help is providing the space so the entrepreneur zones can set up, and then we also help. Yeah, I keep going back to this fundamental life skill thing. It's fundamental, no pun intended, to get people to a point to where they want to engage, right? And so that's a big thing that we provided them shelter, provide them the fundamental life skills, give them access, provide them information. Poverty is a disease of lack of information and isolation. And so if we can help people break from that, there's a story, I'll go back to the Michaels Development Group. It's a person named Mario. Mario was living in one of their properties. A community coordinator knocked on their door 18 times before they opened the door. And they said, what do you want? And they said, why don't you just come play basketball with me? They went and played basketball. Fast forward 15 years, Mario is now a senior executive with the Michaels Development Company. So I think we're all getting it wrong in society and around the world as we go in and we say, you need to become an entrepreneur. And no, you got to step way back and say, what's psychologically holding you back? Deal with that, get people stabilized, and then move to specific vocational things.
You know, I'm seeing two great big huge differences. One of the things that you're talking about is significantly reducing the cost of capital so that the cost of basically everything can come down.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'm seeing is investing in people.
Correct.
Now I'm starting to understand. Tell me why significantly reducing the cost of capital is so important.
So if you think of a building and it's paying, say it's a hospital, and it's paying 8% in debt fees. Mm-hmm. If you reduce that to 3%, that extra 5% can be used to pay salaries, run programs, focus on healthcare, whatever you need. That's one. Two, if you think about businesses, right, and the capital cost that they incur, what does that translate into? Reduced wages, higher product fees. It's just, we're creating our own problem with the cost of capital.
So if we were to do and if we were to follow what you were already doing, then, I mean, wouldn't that make bond investors upset because you would be driving the market down? You would be making the cost of money less?
Well, the last time I checked, the cost of money is actually fairly inexpensive today, and there's many reasons for that. But if their cost of services went down, and they had to pay less for things, then they wouldn't need to make as much.
Okay. Let's go to another part of the outcomes evaluations criteria, which is something very different for an entity that provides capital, and it's your community's childhood education. Why is that important?
Well, you know, childhood education and childhood stability, I kind of wrap them all together. So the children are the future of our country. That's one. Two, if a child is showing that there's other options out there, they'll work towards that. So again, at age 8, for me, I joined a ski group called Mogul Ski Group. That's why I called my first company Mogul, by the way. And nobody got the joke, so I had to change the name. But in that ski group, I met people that weren't, you know, living in the conditions I was living in. And again, I'm grateful to my parents. I thought we had a lot. But they had a different life, and that opened my eyes to things. And then I ended up going to good schools, which helped me, and it helped me change my life. And so education at a young age is very important, and good teachers at a young age are very important, and they can become mentors. So it's not about what's written down, it's not about the test, it's about the people interaction. I think our society's gone away from this connectivity, and it's gone to a disconnected society. And so that's why education is important. It's about the connectivity component of it.
Well, some people say that because of society all around the world has gotten into the high-tech world where we send an email instead of making a phone call or instead of walking over and saying hello, that it's the high-tech world that has caused this. Is that something that you try to overcome, or is that accurate? Because you were part of the high-tech world.
I was part of the high-tech world for 10 years, and there's a balance there that needs to be struck. You know, people ask me, why am I only home 10 days a month? It's because I want to connect with people, but I still use technology. It's everything's a balance.
Now there are thousands, literally thousands in the United States and probably around the world as well, of organizations that are trying to help with childhood education. Are they, and we still have the problem of a lack of childhood education. Are these organizations wrong?
No, I think there's a lot of good organizations that are getting it right, but it's highly fragmented. Like the charter school movement, I don't know if that's going to be the ultimate solution, but it's causing people to stand up and say, we've got to do something different. You look at Teach for America, I think they're doing good work. I think some of the public schools are turning around and trying to figure out how do they compete and stay relevant. And if that's what the charter school movement does, I'm okay with that.
How does, what involvement in education does your group have in terms of the Center for Greater Good's impact investing?
Our goal is to provide capital to fund charter schools and to provide low-cost student housing. And I want to focus on the low-cost student housing. You hear a lot about foundations giving scholarship awards. Mm-hmm. Well, the student shows up and they got the scholarship to go to school, but all their other costs aren't covered. And they also show up and they may leave a support system and they go into a college system. And there's an RA there instead of a community coordinator or somebody that they're used to working with. And so they drop out after the first year. The dropout rate in the first year for people in poverty getting these scholarships is extremely high. It's not acceptable.
So the scholarships, then, are you saying that the scholarships just perpetuate the system?
I think they're well-intentioned. I just think they're not the complete solution. And I think you need to look at the whole ecosystem that surrounds the student, including the cost they pay for housing.
So John, under the primary concern of education, we've got several sub-concerns. We've got low educational attainment, household overcrowding, and childhood mobility. Why is the Center for the Greater Good concerned about that?
So I'll start with household overcrowding. So when you have a crowded household, and I've experienced all three of these. You know, my family is a great family. My sister, my brother, my uncle, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, we all lived in the same house at one point. And the stress that brought into our family, I can't even speak about on this show. And it took me a long time to think through that and what it meant. And
so through significantly lower capital cost, that circumstance has the potential to be relieved.
Correct. Plus, you know, families that are in that situation having some guidance on how to deal with the issues. That's one. And then two, on childhood mobility. When you move, I mean, I still can't tell people where I'm from exactly. I lived in 5 to 6 neighborhoods by the time I was age 17.
Hmm.
And so no connectivity to friends, no connectivity to teachers long term. You know, I never felt connected, so to speak. And that affects your ability to perform.
Speaking of connection,
Mhm.
John, you're a good-looking guy, got a nice suit, got a good tie. You are working in a community and you go out into a community that's in poverty. How are they going to trust you?
Well, I don't know if they need to trust me, but the people that I work with and the groups that I've decided to work with, and I spent 3 years and talked to 3,000 people to find the quality people, and that's who they need to trust. It's not about me. It's really about the people that we decide to work with.
All right. So let's continue on. In fact, there is, and this is going to be politically incorrect to a lot of people, but this comes from Columbia University that says that the children from low-income families are raised in environments that do not promote their cognitive and social development. Is that what you're finding as well?
Absolutely.
Is that what you lived in?
Yes.
So how can what you're doing at the Center for the Greater Good impact this?
I go back to the story of Mario. In that apartment, doors knocked on 18 times. Finally comes out to play basketball. From that community coordinator. The funding for community coordinators across the country has been cut. Our fund can help fix that. Our model can help fix that.
Is this a model? Let's say that we've talked about Kenya, and we could go into any other in a very, very low income country. How would it work differently in a very low income country than it would in San Francisco?
That's the great thing about the framework. It is a framework, and what we would do if somebody wanted to use this overseas is we would first give it all to them, and then if they wanted to work with us, great. If they didn't, they just wanted to adopt it for their own needs, that'd be great too. How I would envision it working is financing for community development happens wherever you are. And so if you're financing a building in New Jersey or in Kenya, it still needs capital. And so that capital has a cost to it, and if we can lower the capital cost and then take some of the profits and put it back to fund the community coordinators, the model just repeats.
And so you monitor your investments, your impact investments through your community coordinators?
Yes.
Okay. And so that it's dependent upon you and your team's ability to hire the right people.
It is.
Again, you're investing in people then too.
Yes, we are.
Let's go on to the next part of the outcomes evaluations criteria, your community's health and wellness. And the statement is this: mental and physical health greatly affects one's quality of life. Simple interventions have a high impact on a person's health. What kind of simple interventions?
Simple interventions from showing somebody how to do their resume. Simple interventions for somebody learning how to use Microsoft Word. Simpler interventions, there's a great story in New Jersey, Michael's Development. They held a senior training class for computer learning skills. And then the mayor showed up and the news showed up and they graduated them and their pride was huge. Interventions, putting a pool table in a senior building downstairs to get the men out of their units so they would come and hang out and socialize. And that allows people to live longer and stay in age and place versus going to an acute care center.
This is primarily geared towards health and wellness, though, physical health, because there's a statement here from a senior research scientist, Susan Baby, PhD, says our neighborhoods literally are making us fat. How so?
We have food deserts all over the place. So I'm focusing on the U.S. right now, but when you go overseas too, obviously there's food deserts. But
when you say food deserts, you mean like areas where there is fast food and that's pretty much it?
Yeah, it's fast food, it's poor choices, it's liquor, it's, they'll have 5 bananas in there and it's a liquor store. It's just, again, cost of capital, right? So if I go to these neighborhoods and what's the only stores that can pay the margins for the rent? It's the liquor stores. And they happen to have some groceries in there.
And that's all around the United States that you've seen as well?
Yep.
Let's continue on. You're also talking about, as a sub-concern of the health and wellness of a community, is the personal safety, substance abuse, and disease prevalence. This is all incidence of poverty. Is that really kind of what you're
Yes,
talking about?
all of this is rolled up into poverty. People think poverty and they think lazy. That's part of our issue is
Yeah.
people don't understand poverty. Poverty today is where green was 30 years ago, and everybody focused on green, which is great for energy savings and the environment. And now you know what green means when I say green, pretty much. But people, when you say poverty, it's where it was 30 years ago. It's this thing you can't really fight against, and we're trying to put a personality on poverty so we can all fight against it and stop it.
The personal safety and these other parts, substance abuse, I mean, illegal substances cost money.
Yes.
And if you are in poverty and you don't have very much money, why go for the substances that are illegal?
Yeah, that's a whole discussion, and I sit here 6 years sober myself, so I have some personal experience with this.
But you weren't in poverty at that time.
No.
So I come back to my point, and the point is that what you're trying to do is to help alleviate poverty, help eliminate poverty through the Center for the Greater Good. Yet what you are finding are that there is a high degree of substance abuse among people in poverty. Does that get down to that individual, personal investing in people?
It does. It gets down to the connection, and it gets down to the fundamental life skills. I keep going back to that. It's these fundamentals that trap people. It's a lack of information, it's isolation, it's a lack of self-esteem, it's all these things that roll up, and then choices are made. And those choices aren't healthy for you sometimes.
Can the community coordinators that you've talked about, are they like, for lack of a better word, and boy, this is not the right way to say this, but are they RAs on steroids?
That's one way to think about them, yeah.
So they're like personal friends, but isn't that like a huge, massive job? Or are there more than one community coordinators inside a...
So our model, the way we've done it today, and we're always open to changing the model, and we're looking for input. For every 100 units of housing, we could support one community coordinator. So if there were 500 units, we could have 5 community coordinators. And so, yeah, it needs to scale.
And what we're going to do is, as I'm sitting here, we've got more information that we have to get through with John, and so we're going to ask John to stay on for part 3 of this interview, and you can call it bonus material if you will. John, in 20 seconds, what's the biggest success that you've had?
The success I've had is not about me. It's about the people that have joined our cause and the great partners that surround me today. And I'm just so grateful for that.
We're going to let that be the last word for part 2 of this interview with John Belluomini of the Center for the Greater Good. Be sure to go to the website, centerforgreatergood.com. We'll see you next time on Rainmakers TV. Take care.